We're talking today with Mr. James de la Cruz of Wyoming, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. de la Cruz, can you start by telling us a little bit about your own background? To start with, where and when were you born?
Okay, I was born in San Benito, Texas in November of 1945.
And what did your family do there?
My parents at that time basically were, I refer to them as peasantry.
Mm-hmm.
Peasantry are people that are below, as far as the social strata, below the shopkeepers. My parents didn't own property. They did not grow crops or anything like that, although my dad did work. I'm sure he worked in the fields,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a main means of making money in the Texas border area. Our family comes from the McAllen, Texas, the Reynosa, Mexico area, as well as, that's on my mom's side, and on my dad's side, it's Harlingen, Texas, and Matamoros, Mexico, and the two, between Reynosa and Harlingen, it's only about 60 miles apart or so.
Mm-hmm.
But primarily, my parents are from what's called the Valley in Texas, which is on the Rio Grande.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was probably about 28 years old, and my mom was probably about 14 or 15 when they got together. It's quite a age disparity, but that's the way life is sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the second born. I have an older brother that's a year and a half older than myself. When I was 1 year old, my mother and I came up to Michigan. My father was a migrant worker and
Mm-hmm.
worked in the Bay City area in the mid-40s.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 year, in the year probably of 1946 or 47 in there, he and a friend had finished out working in the sugar beet fields in the Bay City area, and they had heard that there was work to do here in the Grand Rapids area.
Mm-hmm.
So my father and his friend, named Renato, I'm not really sure what his last name is at this point, but he and my father and Renato, they came over to Grand Rapids area to find work, and they did. They found work here. I believe my father's first job over here, or one of the first ones, was to be offloading boxcars over on Commerce Street near Wealthy,
Mm-hmm.
in the downtown area. And that was in probably 1946. And that's when I came up after my dad had been here a few months in Grand Rapids. My mom and myself came up to Grand Rapids. And my older brother David, he stayed in Mexico with Grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And well, at that age, we don't have a lot of history as far as in terms of photographs of that time frame. So I really don't know that much about my early childhood. I do know that we lived on Cass Street near somewhere, I believe was north of Franklin Street,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, on Cass Street.
Now, did you move around much when you were a kid, or did you stay in one place for a while?
Well, I would say probably did move a lot. My earlier recollections of where we lived, I was raised in Grand Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
So we lived at different homes or apartments in Grand Rapids area. And as I say, probably one of the earliest homes that I can remember was the one on Cass Street there. Another early place that we lived was near the roundhouse, where trains were stored off from Century Street near the Hall Street area. There was not much of a house. There were
Mm-hmm.
more like shacks.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember living there with my older brother. By that time he was here. and then a couple other siblings, a younger brother and a sister. So there was four of us, plus mom and dad living in this shack. And actually, it's one of my fondest memories are of that shack, if you want to call it, this house. And I think because of the age that I was at, probably around 4 years old or 5, it was an adventureland. We lived close to the railroad tracks, and we actually would go out next to the railroad tracks and actually run alongside the big locomotives.
Right.
And they would, of course, the engineers, they would blow their horn and scare us with a horn. And one of the memories that really stands out of those particular times was that the guy in the caboose would throw us out old golf balls. I remember that. And we would play with the golf balls, and then eventually we would tear them apart, take the outside cover off, and we'd play with unwinding all the rubber,
Right.
all the rubber band in these golf balls, and then end up with a core. And as I said, we're probably about 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6 at the oldest. But I did go to Lafayette School for elementary. Lafayette School was later James of Vandenberg School. I also went to Franklin School in elementary grades. Also went to Jefferson Elementary School. I think it's on the southeast side of Grand Rapids, I think.
Yeah, well, that's where Jefferson would be, so yeah.
And I remember, having a really great time living on Granville Avenue. We had some really close friends when we lived on Granville Avenue. I was a little older, probably about 9 or 10 years old by then, but we had the Gerard family that were wonderful people. There was Dwight Gerard, and there was his wife Gloria Gerard, and then they had a couple of boys. It was Jerry Gerard and Doug Gerard, and we had a wonderful time with those kids. As I say, we're probably about 10 years old, but we actually got into forming a clubhouse with the kids, and I have really fond memories of growing up with other kids. We played outside a lot, which is much different than it is today. But we did play outside, and we were poor, pretty much. We were poor people, and our family was poor. My father was a laborer.
Now, did he have work most of the time?
Yeah, by that time he had started working at American Excelsior Corporation, which is down on Godfrey Street near Hall. And he worked there, I believe, for 5 or 6 years. There was a big fire there where he worked. And they made Excelsior products, which we would call them, we would say that was used for packing furniture. It was like shredded wood wrapped in paper, butcher paper, and they used that for packing. And so that's where my dad worked, making this Excelsior product. I guess that's what they called it. But I do remember the big fire they had there. And after that fire, I think it wasn't that much longer before the company relocated to the Chicago area. And my dad decided not to transfer to the Chicago area for his own reasons. After the fire at American Excelsior, he got another job working out in Hudsonville for Gold Crown Produce. They do onion packing. And he worked out there until he retired, which was a good 20 years, 25 years. So my dad did work right along, although he was an unskilled laborer, and And as far as my mom goes, she was a stay-at-home mom, of course. So there was 6 of us kids, and we we did buy a house. My dad bought a house on Lafayette Street in Hall back in 1958. I went to South High School, started there
Mm-hmm.
in the 7th grade after finishing the 6th grade at Jefferson Elementary School. Excuse me a minute. Went to South High School, started there in the 7th grade and went all the way through. And I have some excellent memories about South High School, the early years there, junior high.
So when did you graduate from there?
Graduated in 1964, and this was about the time, well, we had just gone through President Kennedy's assassination, and it was a time when there was civil rights, a lot of civil rights movement.
What was the ethnic mix at South High School when you were there?
I would say it was probably, I would say about 70% white,
Mm-hmm.
20% black, and maybe 5% mixed,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I think those are pretty close numbers.
Now, was there a substantial Mexican American population in Grand Rapids yet, or does that really grow later?
During that time, I don't think there was that big of a Mexican population here. I know that now we say Hispanic, which includes all
Mhm.
Spanish-speaking people. But in the mid 40s and early 50s, there were more Mexican people than Puerto Rican
Mhm.
people or Cubans. Although they do speak Spanish, most of the Spanish-speaking people that were here were Mexican,
Mhm.
either from Mexico or from Texas
Right.
along the border. There was the call for the Mexican people to come up was there was industrial build-up in the Detroit area, so there was a lot of labor that was required.
Mhm.
I'm not so sure about the Grand Rapids requirement for Mexican workers, but I know in Detroit they were pretty heavy.
Well,
They were used.
they used a lot of migrant workers in the agriculture.
In the agriculture, that's true. They did use, I mean, and still do use the migrants that come up from Texas and Mexico to work, harvest the crops here. Although automation has taken over a lot of that.
Mhm.
But getting back to my history here, I graduated from South High School in 1964, and it was a time when we were in the Vietnam War, and there was a draft existed at that time, and for us that were in that age group of 18 or so, we were all pretty well much sure that we were going to get a draft notice, and it would only be a matter of time in that age group. So yes, I did receive a draft notice, and I had done some thinking about how I would want to participate in the Vietnam War, and I had decided that I was going to volunteer in one of the other armed services as opposed to going into the Army and ending up in combat in the Vietnam jungles. That wasn't for me, and but I still wanted to serve.
Right.
I wanted to serve as an American, to be a patriot. I did not have any objections to doing my part as a American, and actually I think I had a pretty good preparation, because when I was in high school I had been involved with ROTC for about 3 years, and learned a lot about the military in high school in ROTC.
What kinds of things did you learn in ROTC that wound up being useful to you when you were adjusting to being a soldier?
I think probably one of the most important part was how to take orders from your leader, also how to be a leader, that is to be part of a group, but also I learned how to maybe take charge if you had to. I think ROTC was a good place to maybe build some confidence in yourself, and also just be involved in a part of the military in a small way. And even though when I was at ROTC, I didn't really associate it with actually going to war. I just was one of those things. I didn't really think about the fact that ROTC experience was going to be useful for me in the Air Force, but I must say that it was very useful. I do remember an experience when I got back from overseas in Thailand that we went to a prisoner of war training camp, and some of the things that I learned in ROTC came out during this training program, exercise that we had in Oklahoma City. Was the POW training, which
That would
is
be train you
to
if you were a prisoner, or how to deal with prisoners.
They would train you as though you were a prisoner. And we went through, I think it was a week of training. And but yeah, I did utilize some of the things I learned in ROTC even at that. That was like, for instance, reading the terrains that we had studied contour maps in ROTC, and of course we were out someplace that I wasn't really sure of where we were, but I got myself acquainted with the terrain there, which I think was important. Also, we learned about foraging a little bit in ROTC, foraging off the land. And then again, that's what we had to do as a POW. You have to forage if you're going to survive out in the woods, or whatever, out in the jungles, foraging. So that would have been helpful, I'm sure. But I think the most important part, was being able to take orders from leaders. Also, marksmanship came in very handy, because we learned marksmanship in ROTC, and then that was, of course, utilized in the military as well. We did have opportunities to fire weapons, rifles and handguns in the Air Force during basic training, so ROTC training was helpful there.
Okay. Go ahead.
Excuse me.
That's not a problem. All right. Now, when did you actually enlist then?
I actually enlisted. I graduated in June of 1964, and I actually enlisted in the Air Force in November of 1965. I remember leaving Grand Rapids on a bus with a bunch of guys. I sat next to a guy that was from Hudsonville. I don't remember his name too much, but he was from Hudsonville, and we got along fine. We rode on a bus from Grand Rapids to Detroit to the induction center, and I remember it was cold in November. But when we got there the first day, we got fed, we got our bedding at the induction center, and we all shared a room. Was what looked like a gymnasium with a bunch of cots in it. That's what it looked like. And we were supposed to go for physicals and inoculations, immunizations, or whatever you want to call them, eye exams and that kind of thing the next day, which we did. We got through the induction center, we got sworn in, and I don't remember too much about what happened much after that. I think we ended up in a hotel room for the night after the physicals.
Right.
And then we were supposed to go to the airport, or I don't remember exactly how we got out of Detroit after induction center, but we ended up in San Antonio, Texas, at basic training, which was going to take about I think was about 8 weeks maybe for basic training.
And which base was this at?
This was at Lackland Air Force Base, and it was pretty well much basic training, which was it encompassed a lot of things. I don't remember too much about it, but it was just basically keeping your bunk and your sleeping area, your dorm, pretty tight. Your bedding had to be straight, and your clothes had to be straight, and housekeeping had to keep the barracks clean, and of course we did have the training during the day, which included drills, marching. We did have an obstacle course that we were supposed to go through, but we didn't because the weather was too bad. It was foul weather, so we weren't forced to go through the obstacle course.
What sort of people did you have training you?
Well, there weren't that many TIs. I do recall just a couple of them. They were pretty much what you would expect for TIs, with the hats with the straight brims, and they would get in your face. They definitely would.
Now, were there guys there who didn't handle it very well?
Yeah, in basic training, we had heard of a couple of fellas that really didn't make basic training. They were let go. They didn't make. They just didn't cut it. Psychological problems or something. I'm not really sure what it was, but I heard of a couple of incidents where guys actually got out. They didn't finish basic training, which is, well, that was them. But as for myself, I just applied myself, and I was made a squad leader there. I don't remember too much about being a squad leader, but I would say that there wasn't any major negative experiences, I guess is a good way to put it. They weren't any outstanding things that happened to me personally that I would say were either way, either positive or negative. I wanted to be more neutral, just take it as it comes and fit in and just do my job, do what I'm supposed to do, and just get through the process.
And was that what most of the guys were doing, pretty much?
Yeah, pretty much. There was some of the guys would get into groups, and they had their games, you might say. They had their card games and darts, and but I was not into that sort of thing too much. I guess I was more of a person that stayed to himself, pretty much. Not that I didn't know how to socialize, and not that I didn't want to socialize, but I just wanted to get through basic training, and I wanted to get through the training, and I didn't want to deviate too much from the center, you might say. And I was not really outgoing. I didn't want to make a name for myself or anything like that, and I just stayed to the center on most things.
And you took care of yourself, and you got through it.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way to get through life, is just kind of watch what's going on and try to fit into it, and not really stand out too much. But anyway, well, we got through basic training, and I was sent home for a break for a few weeks after basic. I came back to Grand Rapids after basic training, was here for a couple of weeks, I think, and my first duty station was in Tampa at MacDill Air Base, which to me was like, it's Florida, right? So
Yeah.
it's like sunshine and sand, and I'd gotten through basic training. I've gotten through tech school.
The tech school, where was that done?
That tech school was in Rantoul, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I got to Rantoul was sometime in December. It was cold again.
Now, was that immediately after basic?
After basic,
Okay.
right? Right after basic training, they flew us out. I think I kind of missed the spot there about coming home for a couple of weeks. I don't remember.
Well, you mentioned that you said you were in basic,
Yeah,
and then you went
basic.
home, and
Yeah.
then from.
I'm kind of cloudy in that one.
Okay.
I don't really remember for sure. I think it was basic training, and then it was tech school immediately with no break.
Mhm.
I think that's the way it
Yeah,
was.
because you'd finished the complete training program and before you get an assignment. So if you went from home to Florida, then tech school was probably before going home.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what did tech school consist of?
Tech school, we were assigned to certain courses, and I ended up in ground power equipment repairman. That's what I qualified in. That was my aptitude, was mechanics. And the tech school, there was a lot of guys there, and we all stayed in barracks, older barracks, and they were not insulated very well at all, and we had oil burning stoves to keep the place warm, and it was not a very pleasant experience.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of interesting guys down there because they come from different parts of the country, and they had different lifestyles and just had stories to tell. The personalities of the guys were something else. Some of them were funny. Some of the guys were, I don't know, to me it was kind of fun in a way, but then you had some other characters that were I can't say for sure, but they were a little bit on the rowdy side during tech school. But as for myself, I didn't want to get into that crowd. And I wanted just to finish what I was supposed to do with tech school and move on.
And so that got you then down to Florida.
Yeah, that after tech school, I think I came home for a little while, and then from home, then I went to my first actual duty base, which was down on MacDill Air Base in Tampa, Florida, and I must say that it was almost like being on vacation, because the barracks there were similar to, I equated them to, compared to what I had been in before, I equated them to being in a Howard Johnson's hotel. There was 3 guys to a room, and it was Florida. Tampa Bay is beautiful down there, and the weather is fantastic, and the air base itself was very, very well kept, well run, had good equipment there, and I think we had a good commander for our squadron. I didn't get a chance to meet him personally, but I just had heard so many positive things about our base commander, and I can't think of anything negative about MacDill Air Base or anything about it or the people there. They were all fantastic.
What did your duties there consist of, or what was a typical day like when you were working there?
I lived on base, and it was like pretty much a civilian job. We had the mess hall where you would go in the morning and have breakfast, and then walk over to, they were buildings where they kept the equipment, and of course the equipment that we had was to support aircraft, and they were generator sets. We had hydraulic test stands. We had bomb lifts, hydraulic driven. We had portable air conditioning units. We had compressors, air compressors, both high pressure and low pressure air compressors. And we had, which I was fascinated in, one of our pieces of equipment was turbine driven, which is a small jet engine. And the turbines would drive the generators, and then the generators would provide electrical power to the aircraft for aircraft testing on the ground.
Now, was your job to operate a lot of the equipment or to maintain it?
My job was to maintain the equipment. As a repairman, we were trained to work on different types of drivers, that is gasoline engine drivers, diesel engine drivers. These are basically motors or engines. We had electric driven generators as well. But we had to work on hydraulic test stands, which were hydraulic units that would be connected or attached to aircraft. Aircraft would be lifted up off the ground, and they could test their landing gears with it, and their control, their wing control, avalons, or what do you want to call them, to guide the airplanes. That they would do the testing on the ground using these hydraulic test stands. They wouldn't have to power up the engines, the jet engines. That was what my job was, basically repairing the ground power equipment to support the aircraft.
Did the stuff break down very much, or did you have a lot of time sitting around?
We stayed busy. There was work to do. There was plenty of work to do. I can't say that we were overloaded. We had a crew on our tour, on our shift, that probably consisted of about 30 guys, 30 airmen. And so there was plenty of help, and we had tech books that we could refer to for repairs, and we could go to more experienced technicians there that we could ask for help if we got on a repair job that we weren't too familiar with. Overall, I think let's call it the management of the maintenance supply, or of the maintenance repair, they were really, really helpful. And again, I can't say anything bad about my experiences as a repairman. There was always someone there to help. If I got into a situation where I was working on a piece of equipment that I wasn't too familiar with, there was always help available. So.
Okay. Now, and then as a regular job, you get kind of regular time off. You can leave base and that kind of thing. And did you enjoy living down there?
Actually, the jobs that we had as repairmen or any job was pretty much civilian. It felt like a civilian job. Only difference is that we had a uniform that we wore. But the hours, my work hours, were a regular shift, which is 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, and an hour for lunch. And so the work was like a civilian job, pretty much. I was on base, and there was all the comforts were there, actually. They weren't strict or anything like that. I was not in a combat area here stateside, so there wasn't that much to
but could you go off and go to the beach or go to sporting events or things like that?
We lived on base in the barracks, and any time after work, that was your time. You could go into town. You could go to college if you wanted to. Go off base. Basically, as I said, it was like a civilian job. There was off-base, I guess there was some off-base living. I wasn't too interested in living off base at the time, but there was provisions made for people that wanted to live off base. They could. Some of the guys had cars that they could use. They used them on base, off base, where we were pretty well much free to come and go on or off the base.
Now, how long were you stationed there?
I was at MacDill Air Base for 14 months, and after MacDill Air Base, I got orders to go to Ubon in Southeast Asia, Thailand, and
Now, were you going out individually to join a unit, or was a whole group of you going at the same time?
there was from my base in MacDill. I think there was a small group going to Thailand. I don't remember too much about how many of the guys went to Ubon, but I think in the squadron I was in, there might have been probably about 20 to 30 people that went to Thailand.
Now, what was your reaction when you got the news that you were being shipped over there?
I was kind of looking forward to going. I think I didn't have any fear about going. I guess I wanted to be open-minded about it, and like I have done other things before, was to just go and do what I had to do.
Right.
Pretty much. I was not too excited about going, but I wasn't reluctant about going either. It was an assignment, and I'm in the military, and I just take orders, and I guess just be open-minded about things, and go and do your time, and things will work out.
Did you think at all, well, it's not Vietnam, it's not where the war's going on or whatever?
Yeah, I didn't want anything. I want much to do with going to Vietnam and getting into jungle warfare. And I had heard some stories about jungle warfare, and they definitely were not for me. There was some guys back in high school that I talked to, and even in as a regular, that wanted to go over to Vietnam, but it wasn't for me. I didn't really care to go.
All right. Now, how did they get you out to Thailand?
We flew from California. Was our departure. They gave we got some time. We had some. The service gave us some time to get to California. They paid for our airfare out there, and they paid for our lodging in California. And we were in California 2 days, I think. And it was just simply getting over to where they ship us out, out of California, and it was a long flight.
Did you fly commercial flights, or were these Army ones?
These were commercial flights. We did land, I think it was in Japan for refueling, from what I recall. And it was just a short stop to refuel, and then on to Thailand.
Now, did you fly into Bangkok, or did you go to Ubon, or?
We flew into Bangkok. I don't remember the flight too well. As far as in Bangkok, we landed in Bangkok, and we were there for 2 or 3 days in the city. And of course, what we want to do is go out to the nightlife. We're all young, and get with a bunch of people, and go out and check out the nightlife, and get used to the climate, because it was pretty warm.
Right.
But after that, it was just a matter of waiting a few days to get shipped out to Ubon.
Now, were there a lot of American servicemen in Bangkok at that point? If you're at least going out to the nightclubs or things like that, you'd see a lot of other guys there?
There was a pretty good number of GIs over there from all branches. There was all the branches were represented, and there were servicemen And I don't remember too many service women, but
Mhm.
more servicemen from other countries
Right.
too. There was Canadians in Bangkok. There were servicemen from Australia,
Mhm.
and I believe there was a few from England. So it was a mix.
Mhm.
There weren't a lot of them. I think
Right.
there were more American
Right.
GIs there than service people from other countries.
Mhm. All right. And then from there, you go up to Ubon. Now, do they fly you up there? Or?
Yes, we flew up to Ubon, and one of the things that I was really surprised with Ubon when I landed there was it wasn't too much after landing at the air base there that I noticed that our American GIs were speaking their language. I was just
Mhm.
totally surprised by that our servicemen were pretty fluent in their language, and it impressed me right away, and it continued to.
Now, did they have things like language classes on the base, or were they just picking it up from the locals?
I think they were just picking it up from the locals. I don't recall that there was an actual school where you could attend to learn the language, but I was so impressed with that I wanted to learn it, which I did eventually.
Mhm.
I learned how to speak a little bit of Thai, and I learned that from a fellow that I worked with. He was a helper when I was working on flight line dispatching of units. I had a worker, was a national. He was an older gentleman. I mean, compared to myself,
Mhm.
I was about 21 or 22, and I think he was about 35 to 40. And real likable gentleman. And I got interested in talking with him about I wanted to learn the language, and so he was I would ask him how to say a word, and
Mhm.
he would tell me, and I would write it down, and I started to learn words initially, some of the more important words, and then I started tying words together, and that's how I got my language skills. It was one word at a time.
Okay. Can you describe the base at Ubon a little bit? What sort of place was it? What was there?
The air base was they had older barracks there where we stayed, and there was probably about 30 guys to a barrack,
Mhm.
and we all had the small cots to sleep on, and we had lockers. The barracks were basically frame buildings they were all screened in. They used screen in them, and they had metal roofs on them, and they were breezy.
Mhm.
You needed that breeze in the tropics there in Ubon.
Now, did it rain every day? Or?
It rained, but it was a warm rain, and we had pretty decent. Well, we had sidewalks and roads on base, so that wasn't a problem as far as mud was concerned. There was a lot of tarmac. Mud was not a problem. The rain, it would rain, but not what I would call really significant
Mhm.
amounts of rain. But yeah, it was tropical.
Okay. Now, what kind of units were based there? Were there bombers, fighters, transports?
On base, we had the F-1, the Phantom F-1s, which were classified as a fighter bomber.
Mm-hmm.
We had the KC-135s. No, we didn't have the KC-130. The 130s, I think they were cargo.
Yeah, C-130s.
C-130s are cargos. We had a lot of those coming and going. We had we called them mix masters, which were I think they were smaller Piper Cub
Mm-hmm.
surveillance
Right.
planes. They were a one-man, and they had a prop in the front of the fuselage and a prop in the back of the fuselage with a double tail assembly. They called him a mixmaster, I guess, because they had two props. And also, there was another one too, a helicopter. They had two opposing rotor blades on them too. I think they would call those mixmasters too. I think, not sure. We had what I was really impressed was what they called the Black Dragon, which was a converted KC-130. Was all flat black painted, looked like black primer paint, and it had a 50 millimeter cannon in it that was water cooled, and they used a real high intensity light for night strafing,
Yeah.
I guess they would call it. But this 50 millimeter cannon was rated at about, I'm not sure, but about 1,000 rounds a minute, which I thought was a great number. But I guess it was a pretty deadly weapon. And I had seen the Black Dragon up close a few times. I didn't know much about it in action, but I saw it a few times on the base. And story was that the light was so intense on that they used that it would burn a broomstick if you put it up against where the light beam was coming from. That it would actually burn a broomstick, would light it up like a match. So it had to be a pretty intense light. But it had quite a reputation, and it was a scary weapon. The Phantom 4s, or the F1s, the F1s were a beautiful aircraft, and they were nice to look at, and I was totally impressed with them. I did get a chance to get up close to them. I got up close to them in Tampa, and also in Ubon. And although I don't know that much about the aircraft, it was a wonderful piece of machinery, and I'm just glad I had a chance to get up close to our Air Force planes. I still like airplanes, and but I tell you, it was one of the greatest experiences I ever had was to be a part of the Air Force and to be up close to the whole atmosphere, the whole thing about the guys and the teamwork that was displayed, the camaraderie, the life experiences of doing and going places that you would not ordinarily see and do, the opportunities that present themselves, but of course with our immaturity we don't capitalize on them. Young people have this odd way of thinking as opposed to the older you get. It's true, the wiser you get, but it just seems that when we're young we do miss a lot of opportunities, but well, I guess we can't do it all the time.
But you wind up getting in some places you might not when you were older.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Now, were your duties at Ubon pretty much the same as they had been down in Florida? Were you working with the same kind of equipment, or what was maybe different about the work on that base rather than in Florida?
There was very little difference between working. The jobs in Florida were similar to the ones in Ubon, and likewise they were similar to the jobs that I did when I finished up my tour in Ubon. I ended up in Tinker Air Base, which is a 3rd Mobile Comm Group in Oklahoma City, or Del City, which is near Oklahoma City. Tinker Air Base was my last duty station, and they had the same power generating equipment, but they did use more diesels there. They used diesel-driven generators, and because it was a mobile comm group, we would actually go out into the field for 2 weeks at a time, I believe. We would pack up, leave the base, and go live out in the field for 2 weeks, do a complete setup, tents. We'd actually live in tents. It was like summer camp. We would call National Guard summer camp, kind of like that. And this was part of our assignments, or our job was to go set up a mobile communications center, and would be kind of like a remote communications center, complete with satellite communications and radar, and again, this equipment was used for, I'm sure, combat purposes, radar and satellite communications. I don't know too much about that, but we would set up two groups. One would be on one part of the state, and the other group would be the other side of the state, and they would communicate with each other, and that was our assignments there.
Okay, let's gotta go back into Thailand here to kind of develop some other dimensions of this. So there were aircraft there flying in and out of that base. Were they flying combat missions over Vietnam or Laos or Cambodia as part of what they were doing, or did you not? What did you know or not know about what the aircraft were actually going and doing while you were out there?
I knew very little about the sorties. I knew very little about where they were going, what they were doing. I knew very little about the armaments that they had, what type of bombs they were dropping, and that sort of thing. I guess it wasn't my need to know.
Okay.
I had a job to perform, and I did my job, and it was not that involved in operations or
Did you see much of the flight crews or the air crews or the people who were actively involved in what would be the campaign stuff, or did they kind of have their own groups and you were with a different group?
I can't say that I knew. I didn't know any of the pilots. I didn't know any of the people that were in logistics. I didn't know any of the people that were associated or were there, that were planning the sorties or anything like that. We had secret clearance. We had classified clearance as far as where we could go on base and that sort of thing, and how much information we were allowed to know. I guess I just wasn't that inquisitive about what other people were doing.
Right. Now, was there much sort of news kind of circulating around about what was going on in Vietnam at the time? Well, about what time frame were you there? Is there 66, 67, or when you were actually in Thailand?
I was in Thailand from November of 1967 to 68. It was a one-year tour. And from what I can recall, I just saw it as another part of the military assignment. It was another phase of my time in service, and it was another period I had to go through.
Sort of interesting dimension to that is 67, 68 is when things on the ground in Vietnam were pretty hot. The Khe Sanh, Tet Offensive, a lot of the larger campaigns, or the more famous ones, were sort of going on. It was when the American forces in Vietnam were getting up to their largest, and you had different crisis moments going on in that phase of things. But because you were in Thailand and because you were not tied into the operations end particularly, for you it was kind of more of a regular job and a lot like what you saw before and after, rather than some larger crisis or something else like that.
That's right. I consider myself to be fortunate in that I was not that heavily involved in military activity. I did my part,
Mm-hmm.
but I was not. I was kind of removed from the combat.
Right.
I was removed from it. We had missions to Vietnam that flew out of Ubon,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as for me to actually know how many sorties went out of there,
Mm-hmm.
when, I just couldn't tell you because
Right.
I did not have a need
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah. Not part of your job there. Well, what indications were there at Ubon that there actually was a war going on? Do you have base security or things like that?
The probably the biggest thing over there was the idea that there were Viet Cong around the air base.
Mm-hmm.
We did have bunkers on base that were they had guards. The Thai nationals were set up there. They had their bunkers on base, and we could see them, and they were armed.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally there would be some talk about Viet Cong being on the perimeters of the base. And I myself would occasionally think about some mortar shells coming in, but as far as the base actually having an attack of any sort, not while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
There was, that I can recall, there was no incidents of any type of attack.
What sort of connections were there between people on the base and the Thai people and so forth? You've got some military at the base. You have civilians working on the base along with you. I mean, you mentioned one helper fellow that you worked with. Were there a lot of Thai people with different jobs on the base?
There, the base did utilize Thai nationals, and again, as far as I can recall from my, I didn't see what I would call high level use
Mm-hmm.
of Thai nationals in really unusual or let's say at top commanding levels.
Right.
We utilized they utilized the nationals more for service.
Mm-hmm.
In the service sectors or the service end of the base. They did use the guards, the bunker guards.
Right.
They were infantrymen, I would suppose. Mm-hmm. And we did have some help on base with some of the basic housekeeping, you might
Right.
say.
So cleaning, haircutting, cooking, things like that?
Groundskeeping,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So they were, I guess they would be classified as domestic.
Yeah.
Domestic employees, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So you have someone else wash your clothes?
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of thing? Yeah.
They were available, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you get much chance to go off the base? Were there towns you could visit or things like that in the area?
The town was accessible to the military guys there, the GIs. We did get orientation on base when we first got there, and they did pretty much caution us about certain areas and about certain activities. They talked about sexually transmitted diseases. They talked about, during orientation, they talked about just staying out of what they would call off-limit places, off-limit parts of town. And for the most part, the servicemen there were pretty, they followed the rules pretty good, I would say overall. One experience I had, I'd been there for probably 8 or 9 months, so I'd gotten used to going into town quite a bit, and after hours, but I found myself in one of these off-limit places at night, and was one of the strangest, surreal experiences that I had, was leaving the off-limits area at night. It was quite, well, actually it was more like early in the morning, but I saw this group of people coming down the sidewalk. Of course, there's no one around except this group of people coming, and I couldn't make out what they were, but they seemed to be draped in clothes of some sort, like shawls, and they were covered from head to foot. And later I found out that they were lepers. There must have been a group of maybe a dozen or so. They were walking in a straight line, and it was at night. I didn't get scared or anything, but I just couldn't make out what it was. Well, later on I found out that they were lepers, and well, I guess leprosy is contagious,
Yeah,
from what I understand.
Not too badly. It's treatable, but yeah. Okay, the tape here is about out, so I'm going to stop. Restart here.
Okay.
Now, we were kind of talking about sort of the experiences in Thailand and so forth. Now, was it pretty common for men on the base to have girlfriends in town and that kind of thing? Was that
in a foreign where, for the most part, people are friendly towards you, where I guess the customs of the people in Thailand overall are much, much different than what we have here in the States. I mean, they're just so much different. They have beliefs in Thailand that is true to the people of Asia. And so to talk about Americans getting involved or interacting with the Thai people, there is, this is only my opinion, but I think that there's a lot of beauty in the interaction between Americans and the Thai nationals. And I'm talking about the beauty not only with the young, but also with the old people. The Thai people have a form of what I would call gentleness. They're very gentle people. They're happy. The people are generous. They're kind. They're thoughtful. This was my experience. The people that I met were of all ages, both male and female, and I can't think of one experience that I would say was bad.
Was having the American base in the area something that was good for the local economy and that sort of thing? And was it good to have you there, or as opposed to something that might be a danger or a disruption or a problem? Did they seem to be kind of fairly welcoming or appreciative of having you there? Or
I was, during the whole time I was in Thailand or up there in Ubon, I can't think of any time where I felt threatened out on the streets at any time of the day or night. Did I feel a threat? Did I feel that I was in danger or in harm's way? And as a young person, I would go off base with some of the guys, and we'd go to the local saloons and stay out late and come back to the base, and sometimes by myself, sometimes with a buddy or something. And I can't say that I ever experienced any what I would call fear.
Sure. So there weren't people waiting to jump you and take your wallet
Oh,
or anything
no.
else like that?
Oh, no.
Now,
No.
when they were warning you about places to stay away from or that were off limits, were they worried about crime or gambling or drugs, or did they not really even tell you?
I'm not really sure what that may have been. Only thing that I can imagine is that there might have been some enemy
Mm-hmm.
in those areas, but it just seemed as though it might have been limited to a certain part of town,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't any particular place.
Right.
It was more of a section of town, and I would imagine that probably the 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 reason that existed was there might have been some Viet Cong in there that would. Well, it's the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
They can capture you,
Could be a problem.
take you prisoner, or you could end up dead.
All right. Now you mentioned before we did the interview, you showed me some of your pictures and so forth from there. Some of them were sort of celebrity pictures. You had one of Bob Hope, for example. Did Bob Hope
Yeah.
come to your base?
Yes, Bob Hope was at our base. Also, along with him was Miss Universe was with him. Was an entourage. Also, Raquel Welch was with them, and the USO show. They did do the entertainment
Mm-hmm.
portion of the show, and the GIs really liked it, and the women that came with Bob Hope were beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a good time. It just seemed like it went by too quickly, though.
Mm-hmm.
It was a matter of a few hours. They came and went, and it seemed like it just was over so soon.
Mm-hmm.
We had anticipated their arrival, and even though we were entertained for a few hours, it just went by too fast.
Right. Now you also had some pictures of, I think, like the entourage, whatever, for the King of Thailand. Did the King come up there?
Yes, the King of Thailand did visit our air base one time when I was there, and it was anticipated the King coming to the base, and I'm not sure how I got on the route that the King was going to be on, but I have photos. I think I might have been on a bus
Mm-hmm.
the day that the King was coming. I might have been headed towards the base on a bus, and I had my camera with me, and I was taking pictures, but the armed guards that were lining the streets that the King was going to be on was just amazing. That the guards were like maybe every 50 feet there was a guard, an armed guardsman, a soldier, and they lined the whole route from the airport to the air base, and it had to be it'd be 3 or 4 miles to the airport or wherever he came
That could
in.
be several thousand men. At that
So
point.
I would assume that it would be guarded the whole way, but it was pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happened to be at the checkpoint Charlie as the King was coming into the airbase. I had my camera with me, and I snapped a photo of the car with the King in it. And to me, I thought it was a photo to have, even though you couldn't see
Mm-hmm.
the King in the car, but you just knew that he was there. And the King is revered. The King and the Queen, they're revered people in Thailand. And I don't know that much about the dynasty there and that sort of thing of Thailand, but they're very revered.
Right. Right. Now, did you go and visit Buddhist temples or things like that? Was that sort of when you went into the towns or down in Bangkok or?
There were Buddhist temples in Ubon,
Mm-hmm.
and they're really quite beautiful architectures, and the design of the buildings are wonderful, and I had a chance to just meet some of the monks that were at the temples, and even though I didn't know that much about their religion, I still had a respect
Mm-hmm.
for their religion, and I respected their God, who is Buddha, and for me to show respect for the people there, when I was in the temple, I obeyed their rules because I wanted to.
Sure.
I didn't want to. Well, I wanted to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a part of their country.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to experience the worship
Mm-hmm.
in their way, not in our way, but in their way, and that was in the temples with the incense, with holding your hands in the posture, and basically just letting people know that I knew that their religion was important to them, and respecting them, and just being a part of that, to me, I think was an experience.
Great. Now, did you get a chance to kind of go down into Bangkok itself, sort of as a tourist or whatever, or on Liberty, or did you just pass through it on the way in and out of the country?
I was in Bangkok probably for a total of 6 days, 3 days coming in to Thailand and 3 days going out. And those 3 days, they're a blur. They just, it sounds like a long time, but I guess the reason I put it that way is because when you're coming into Thailand, everything is so new and,
Right.
and so different compared to what you're used to that you really don't want to do anything that's going to be disruptive to yourself or your surroundings. So you're more or less in a, at least I was, in a state of kind of like in a state of hold. I'm sure that there's probably people that probably could have gotten themselves into some situations at that time, but I just didn't want to do that. I just wanted to well, be on guard, I guess. Be on guard. It's a new place, something that I wasn't used to, and I guess I just wanted to observe what I could, and
Sure.
and I didn't want to get into any trouble with violate any rules over there, not only ours as a military man, but also their rules as their society. I mean, I can only speak from my personal point of view, and
then going back through on the way back, you're
on the
just
way.
focusing on going home at that point?
Well, on the way back, I think I was a little more adventurous on the way back because I knew more about the people in the country and that, and I did have a friend a lady friend that took me about. We went on a tour of the city, and that was quite helpful. The time did go by fast, though. Again, it's you're on a bus for a few hours, and you're back, and just 3 days, it just flies by. Time goes by so quickly.
Right. Now, when you shipped out of Thailand and went back to the States for the last part of your service, were you sorry to go, or was it about the right time for you, or was it just what you were doing next?
I was ready to come back. One of the things that I remember about being there for so long is I missed pizza and I missed American Girls. Those are the two things that I missed the most. And I missed the drive-in theaters. That too. But I guess those would be the three things that I missed the most.
Okay. Now, when you got back and you're stationed in Oklahoma, you described to some extent the nature of the equipment and the duty and so forth there, as well as living conditions and so forth. Were there other things about that sort of last year that were sort of distinctive or different from the earlier stages of your service?
The last part of the military, my military experience, I lived off base, which is different than from before, because I had stayed on base both previous assignments, and this assignment I actually lived off base. I shared a trailer, a mobile home, with a couple other guys, and there's not much to do in Oklahoma. It's a college town, and there's the typical pubs, basically. What I later came to learn is that military towns, they have an underlying, I think, I don't want to stereotype anything, but I think military towns have an underlying thought about servicemen, is that the servicemen are going to come in, they're going to be there for a short while, and then they're going to leave. So I think that because of that, I think the locals of the military towns, the people that actually live there, I don't think they build or want to get attached to military personnel because of that. And it really does make sense in that to make friends with the servicemen that come in to a military town and then for them only to depart, well, that makes for a loss. And I think life in general, I think people don't really like to lose even a short-lived or a short-term relationship or friendship. I don't think people really want to experience that. So I think that might be a reason why I think that I didn't make the connections in these military towns that I think I should have. But I really didn't think about it at the time. It was only until later that I kind of realized that maybe that's why I didn't make the type of friendships with the locals that I could have otherwise had. Only because you make a friendship and then you have to leave.
Right.
So that's what was kind of a revelation for me, or a thought, or an afterthought. But I don't know where that fits into this interview, but I experienced that most military towns that I was at.
Did you maybe notice it a little bit more when you came back? Because you've been in Thailand, you were going to look forward to coming back to the States, but you get there and there's not really a community to be part of beyond the guys who are actually serving on the base?
Well, I don't know if that was part of why I think I felt that way. I think it was just the idea that I was in my last leg of my duty assignment, and I just wanted to finish out my tour and go back home and see what life was going to have to offer.
All right. Now, you were in the service in a period where there's a lot of stuff going on, both in terms of, well, there's a Vietnam War going on, there's also the aftershocks of the civil rights movement, assassinations and all of this kind of thing. There are racial tensions, social tensions. How much of that stuff sort of spilled over into military life? I mean, there would have been people now, the armed forces have been integrated for some time, so there would have been some black servicemen there, as well as Hispanics and whites and so forth. Did you notice much in the way of racial or ethnic tensions or things like that? Did you observe any, or?
No, I can't say that I really witnessed much of racial prejudice. I think that there is some, but not any more than there is any other place. So I would say overall I didn't see that much of it. You would think maybe that might happen given the state or the social conditions for the time. That is in the mid-60s, the early 70s, or the 60s mostly, with the civil rights movement. But I really didn't see a whole lot of that, and I didn't hear a whole lot of what I would say was really hateful
Mm-hmm.
type of prejudice. No,
Yeah.
I think just some of the more common stuff, but that happens everywhere and
Mhm.
anywhere at any time, and I don't think the Vietnam War or the Civil Rights Movement that I could see was any more than any other time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, when you do finally, did your service end early? Because you signed on for a 4-year hitch originally, but didn't serve a full 4 years.
That's correct. He was offered, when I was at Tinker Air Base in Oklahoma City, I was offered an early out. And I wasn't sure if I was going to accept an early out, so I asked if I could think about it for a few days, and which I did. And I just considered some of the options about getting out early or staying in. And the way I felt that I was feeling and the way my life was going at that time, that I was going to take advantage of the early out, and I did. I accepted a 9-month early out, although I have to say that at the same time they were offering me the early out, they were offering re-enlistment
Mm-hmm.
bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
And so for an extended bonus, or for another bonus, they were offering a promotion in rank, and they were also offering a cash bonus, which I think at that time was around $1,400 cash money on top of your promotion,
Mm-hmm.
which was an increase in pay. But even with the incentives, it wasn't for me. I decided to get out, and I made a decision to get out early, and I guess I really didn't think too much about my military experience until years after I
Mhm.
got out. For the longest time, probably not right away, but for a time period there, must have been a good 15 years later or so, or 10 or 15 years later, I started having reoccurring dreams of myself being back in the Air Force,
Mhm.
on base, in the military,
Mhm.
and my dreams were very, very, very vivid. In fact, they were so vivid, the dreams that I was having about being on military base and back in the military, that I actually felt bad when I woke up because I
Mhm.
wanted to stay in those dreams. And this did happen. I did have these dreams where I actually wanted to go back in and serve and be a part of the military. I'm not sure what it was, a psychological thing or what, but maybe it was just my whole life, experiences, that maybe I needed a home.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, what kind of work did you do after you got back?
Well, I got out in 1969, and our economy was going pretty well at that time, and there was a lot of work to do. I mean, a lot of jobs were available. The first job that I got after I finished my military service, I started a job at Kenton County Airport, working for North Central Airlines at the time. I think they later merged, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they merged
became a few
with
different things.
another company. I ended up working at Metro Airport for North Central Airlines, and after I got out, and I worked for North Central Airlines. I started out in baggage, and then was moved into freight to work with the freight agent, scheduling freight,
Mm-hmm.
air freight. And that lasted about 6 months or so, 9 months, when I decided to work for General Motors at the Cadillac Motor Car Company on Clark Street in Detroit. And I did that for a while, and that didn't work out for me, production work, factory work, so I left General Motors. And I thought that I wanted to live in Miami, or in Florida for a while, so I moved to Miami for a few months, and had different jobs between General Motors and subsequently ended up a few years later working for Sears and Roebuck locally here. But there was a lot of odd jobs in between.
But you eventually wind up with the Postal Service?
And eventually wound up with the Postal Services, and I've been there 19 years, and I'm retirement eligible now, and yeah, I guess my dreams about the military stopped when I hired in at the Postal Service.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that government work has been for me right along.
Aside from giving you some of those dreams and so forth, how do you think your time in the service wound up affecting you?
My military time has been one of the best experiences that I've had in my life. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, and if I could do it over again, I would. And I think if I could, I would have done it longer. I mean, given hindsight, I think I would have liked to have stayed in longer than 4 years. I think the military, my military experience was very positive. It was very rewarding in a lot of ways. The GI Bill, I took advantage of that for a few years that was available.
Did you get to college or trade school? Or?
Yeah, I graduated from Grand Rapids JC
Mm-hmm.
and started Grand Valley State College. It was a university back then. I didn't finish out Grand Valley, but I did take some ongoing education classes through Grand Valley, and I still have an interest in graduating someday from Grand Valley State. But
as far as I know, the school's still there.
yeah, it's still there. But my military experience, as I said, I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I recommend it for all and every American man and woman. All. I think we should all serve. It's a learning experience. It's very positive. It's and it just gives you another perspective on life in some ways, and certainly develops some maturity, and gives you a chance to interact with people from other parts of the country and go places that you, some foreign lands, and it's just so many things that the military has to offer, and that's just my take on it.
Now, how did people sort of, in your family or the ones that you know look at all of that? I mean, were they proud of you for having gone, or did some of them not even really acknowledge it? Or
My mother is especially proud. She's still alive. She lives in apartments over in Granville, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom is real proud about us boys serving in the military. I have 3 other brothers that served. I have Alex that was in the Army. Alex served during that time. Joe, my brother Joe, he served in the Army. And then I have a brother, Johnny, that has passed away recently, but he served in the Navy. So my mom had 4 servicemen in at the same time. And I have to say that all of our experiences were positive.
all right. Well, this has been a very informative interview and one that should be useful for a lot of different things. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
You're welcome.
All right. That's a wrap. All right. Well, you're not going to...